So we've inspected our fill, we've inspected our vent. I've also, while we were off camera, inspected the connections at the fuel tank, which are very similar to the fill and the vent connections. And now we're on to what we call the distribution lines. These are the lines that carry the fuel from the tank up to the outboard. In this particular instance, in our splash well, we have a fuel filter assembly. Our distribution line comes in to the input of the fuel filter and then turns around and goes out and delivers fuel to the engine. We replace these filters annually. I like to take a Sharpie and write the date on it so I know when it's been done. But when you're replacing the filter, you need to make sure that you use a marine grade filter. OEM is preferable, but there are lots of reputable aftermarket companies that supply spin-on filters that work. This particular one is a fuel water separator, which means if there is water in the fuel, it will separate and sit down at the bottom of the filter. So, from a fuel system perspective, I'm looking at this hose that's coming in from the tank. It's been sitting in the sun for a number of years. This boat is, I believe, a 2003, and maybe it's time to replace that. I see some rust on our hose here, and also the carbon gets on my finger when I rub the hose, which tells me that this hose is decaying and needs to be replaced. So let's move to the output of the filter. This is usually an assembly that can be purchased from a marine supply store with a primer bulb in it. And I believe that's what we're going to do. This particular hose has been out in the elements for quite a while. I can barely read the U.S. Coast Guard Type B1 labeling on there. I can also barely read any of the markings on the primer bulb. And again, that carbon is coming off on my hand on this particular piece of hose. So I think it's time to replace the hose from the fuel filter all the way into the outboard, and that's a job that we're going to do before we use the boat much more. Also, the stainless steel hose clamps need to be replaced, so let's just call this a replacement job.